Tuesday with Tamika. Thank you guys so much for joining me for yet another episode of Tuesday with Tamika, where you guys already know what it is. We believed in lifting as we climb, turning our trials into treasures, living a life to inspire and not impress, opening up and allowing God to fully restore all the areas of our life, and loving as if we have never been hurt. I am so excited about this episode because you guys know I am all about decluttering mind, body, and soul. I believe that God literally, like the scripture says, men judge our outward opinion appearance, but God judges our heart. And when our heart is too cluttered with life's problems and situations and all of the things, when it there is a direct reflection on how our physical space mirrors what's going on in our heart. I believe today's guest is somewhat of an expert on decluttering. So I am super excited to bring her to the podcast. I believe we're going to share stories, we're going to share tips to really get you to that space of overwhelm, overlooked to overbooked, calm, and full of peace. So, without further ado, hey sis, you have a minute?
Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on. This is really fun.
Thank you, Dana. I am super excited to have you on. Tell the TWT family a little bit more about yourself.
So, I'm Dana K. White, and I am a decluttering expert, but not because this is something that comes naturally to me. In fact, the complete opposite. So, I was born messy, but I did not like my space being messy. I worked very, very hard to change it and never seemed to be able to do that. And in 2009, I started a blog because I wanted to be a writer. Like that was my goal. That was the passion that God had lit in my heart. But I didn't want to write about this. This was not the intention. Instead, I wanted to write to encourage women. And I felt like I needed to get my house under control first because my house was just all consuming for me. And so uh, I started a practice blog. I thought it was temporary. I used a fake name because this was my deep, dark, shameful secret that
Mm,
my house was out of control. Um, and in the beginning, I wasn't teaching anybody anything. I was just trying to stay focused on my house, figure it out. I ended up finding a lot of people who struggle the way that I did, whose brains work very similarly to mine. And even though in the beginning I resisted and said, I'm not going to teach anybody anything because there's no reason someone should listen to me on this stuff, I finally came to the point where I accepted that this was the thing that God had wanted me to write about all along, and that there was something missing out there because a lot of people who talk about this, who talk about organizing, talk about it because they enjoy it, because it's something that they are passionate about. I My brain works very differently from theirs. And so I was always completely mind boggled and like, wait, what? Because there was just this piece missing there. And so that's where I come in. I'll never tell you how to have a color coded pantry, but I will tell you how to go from completely overwhelmed and confused about why this is so hard to, oh, I get it now. I can do this thing. So
mm.
that's the very short version of my story.
Dana, just in you sharing how you got started, I am getting like so many God downloads. First and foremost, when we started, um, before we started and we were doing a little
Mhm.
pre-podcast chat, I was like, well, this is only going to be audio because I look a mess. And that is literally part of the declutter that I think women need to get out of their head. Sometimes it's not just our physical. So I'm saying that, and let me say, I'm going to make this a visual. I'm gonna put this on YouTube and let all the people see it in all their glory
Well,
because
I
that
don't have my lights on. I'm in the dark here, but oh well, it's fine. If it's fine with you, it's fine with me.
and that's only Dana
Yeah.
because I feel like one of my like uh what word am I looking for? Like one of my beliefs and my like something that I stand on is eating my own cooking. So often meaning we teach this content, we give it, but then we
Yeah.
shrink back or we don't consume it. We just serve it for other people. And so this is a way of me eating what we're together helping
Mhm.
people learn that it's not about the prettiness of things. It's
Yeah.
not about all of the aesthetics. I know that Vanity Matrix, and I see that beautiful plaque behind you from YouTube. So Vanity Matrix tell us that it has to look a certain way, but that's not what God is concerned with. He's
Yeah.
concerned. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So it was it was hard to accept that this was the thing God had for me because, the name of the blog that I started back in 2009, anonymously, thought it was going to be temporary, all that, was A Slob Comes Clean.
Mm,
Okay. I had never called myself a slob before that. I God gave me that name and I was like, well, it's kind of catchy, but I did not want to call myself a slob. And I don't ever try to say, let's all call ourselves slobs. Like that's great. No, I mean, like it was a big deal for me to use that word. But because I used that word, and honestly, because it was anonymous, it set me on a path of complete honesty,
mm,
right? Because I had already said the worst thing. Like there was no point in pretending that anything, so I mean, they're still there. They're still there on my site. People can go back and see, like, is she talking about a real mess? Oh yeah, I'm talking about a real mess. There's real pictures. And so you can see, and I shared very openly, very honestly with my anonymous crowd, right? Um, but because of that, I found my people,
mm,
right? Because I was being honest, the people who started to read would say, these are my thoughts. These
yeah.
are my struggles. I thought I was the only one who struggled like this. I thought I was the only one who saw things in this way. And so, because of them saying, me too, right?
Mhm.
Then that was like the biggest transforming thing for me was acceptance that my brain and how it works was created by God and it was not a mistake.
Wow.
Okay. Because I used to be confused by traditional organizing advice and think, what is wrong with me that I don't understand that? What is wrong with me that I try to do what they're telling me to do and it just doesn't work? Like it doesn't play out that way. I look at their before pictures and I think, well, I'd love to have that as a after picture. Like that was how and so people identifying with what I was saying because I was being honest
Wow.
allowed me to see that, okay, these women who are telling me that they relate to what I'm saying are all highly creative, driven, successful women. And then I saw, okay, the creativity is the common thread there, right? Like
Mhm.
that was the big common thread. So it helped me see that this is how my brain works it's directly related to my creativity, which I'm thankful for, right,
Yeah.
like I tell God, thank you for making me creative. It's who I am. I love that part of me, but it also goes along with the fact that I see my space and my stuff differently. And
Yeah.
so it meant that I didn't say, "Oh, well, then I'm not gonna worry about my house because this is how God made me." Instead, it was freedom for me to move forward and say, "I don't have to feel like a failure because traditional organizing advice doesn't work for me. I just need to understand that it was written by organized people. Their brains work differently from mine. I have to figure out what does work for me and the way that God created me." And then that freedom from that shame allowed me to finally move forward and really make an impact in my home.
Isn't that like the number one and like first trick of the enemy is he
Mhm.
tries to get us to compare ourselves to other people. He comes for our identity. Why
Yeah.
aren't you like this? Why I
Yes.
mean, if we go all the way back from the first story with Eve, it was like he changed one word and he made her think that there was something wrong with her and that she could be greater than, right? And even in the story that you just told, that's exactly what he was trying to do. He
Yep.
comes for our identity, he comes for our thought process, and he tries to make us compare with other people. As a woman, as a wife, as a mother, a big part that society, at least Western society, tries to make us play is your house has to look this way. Your
Hmm.
space has to look, you have to be, you have to look this way. And when you don't fit the mold, a lot of people just hide, and shame and guilt, the most two toxic
Yep.
emotions that we can feel, will begin to consume you. How did you break free? Like, how did you say, beside I mean, the blog, I can tell, like, there is so much freedom in just being honest,
Hmm.
telling your truth. Was there ever any transition where you said, "Okay, I do wanna be better, and this is what I'm going to do to be better?"
So the blog was I do want to be better. And I just always want to be clear because I feel like the number one thing that's misunderstood about people whose homes are out of control, which was me, right? Is that they don't care, that they don't that the motivation is the issue. Motivation was not my problem. And
Mhm,
I would venture to say it's not the problem of most of the people whose homes are out of control.
mhm,
I desperately wanted to get my house under control. So it was not for lack of motivation, it was not for lack of inspiration, it was not for lack of trying. I was constantly working on my home. It was literally that I needed to do things differently than the way other people were doing them, right?
mhm,
Like, and part of that was the understanding of how it all works. And so as the blog was from day one, okay, I'm going to do this thing and try it and see what happens. And I would write about it as I was doing it and then work through in
mm,
my brain, like, okay, this is the impact that this thing had. Or, okay, I did this thing that I thought I was supposed to do and it didn't really have the impact that I thought it was going to have. So, which thing has an impact? Okay, I'm going to do that again. Oh, okay, now that I've done that 7 days in a row, now I start to see and understand the impact of it and when to do it in my day and all this kind of stuff. Um, that did that answer your question? I feel
Oh,
like I
yeah,
got off track, but yeah.
that's super powerful
Yeah.
because, like, doing it, right? You were
Yeah.
literally in the process of doing it, and I always tell people, even in the work that I do, it only works if you work it. Like, you have to
Right.
do it. You can't We can talk about it, you can read about it, but until you implement,
Yes.
nothing's gonna happen.
Right, which I my special gift is thinking. Like, I am really good at thinking and trying to plan out how everything's gonna go. So I always before I mean, I had worked on my house tons, right? But I was always trying to come up with the very best plan and the very best way. And honestly, it was the giving up on that and saying, "I'm gonna just focus on keeping my dishes done." Like,
Mm,
that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna focus on this thing. Not because I know if this is the thing I should do. I just know that every time I go to clean my house, I have to catch up in the kitchen first. And catching up in the kitchen uses up all my time and energy, and I never get to the rest of the house. Right.
yeah,
And so I was like, I know there are people who are not behind on their kitchens all the time. And so I'm just going to really zero in on this teeny tiny thing because I thought if I will keep it as small as possible, that lessens my chance of failing because I assumed I was going to fail because I had tried so many times before to change.
mhm,
Right. But as I did that, I would go, oh, okay. Like I learned things like what I call dishes math, right?
mhm,
Dishes math is that I used to put off doing the dishes because I would think I don't have time to do the dishes today because I was thinking if it takes me 5 hours to clean the kitchen after 5 days of not doing the dishes, then obviously the math would say that doing the dishes every day was an hour long task. And I was like, so I couldn't see an hour where I wanted to or could spend working on my kitchen. And
mhm.
so, but then as I did it every day, I realized, oh, okay, if I do it every day, it's 15, 20 minutes, right?
Right.
But if I wait a day, it's not double that, it's an hour. And then
Mhm,
if I wait 3 days, it's hours. And so it was like, okay, the doing helped me see where I had been wrong before,
mm,
right? The misconceptions that I had had and helped me understand, oh, okay. And then the more I did it and the more I experienced that, then that was the motivation for me to make sure I didn't miss a day. Not that I don't miss a day. Sometimes I miss a day, right? But it
Mhm.
was the motivation to not miss a day because I was like, oh, I know from experience that if I'll do them today, it's going to take me 15 minutes. If I wait, it's going to take me an hour tomorrow to catch,
Right.
so just understanding that was incredibly powerful in moving me forward.
As we're talking, I just feel like there are women that and maybe even men that are going to listen to this and just that like technique that you shared, the dishes math, the girl
Mhm.
that's like straight up girl math, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Sharing that is helping them become free. And I
Right.
think that that is probably the whole purpose of why God, initiated you to start the blog and why it has helped so many people and it has really helped your brand grow because there God works in the simple things. There's
Mhm.
like so much freedom. Like we think that there has to be this big aha moment and it's like no, this try this little thing and this little thing will grow into this bigger thing and then that bigger thing will grow into this big and that's how God works. He just like expands.
Right.
I mean, the mustard seed. I keep this mustard seed in my office and you could barely even see it, but it's so
Yeah.
tiny. And the purpose of me keeping that in eyesight is me knowing if I just send these emails, it seems like it's only
Mhm.
to 400 people, but those 400 people can then send it to you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
the small things. So doing the dishes, and now we move over to, and now we, how has this transformed your life doing the small things?
So everything I do is very like my whole decluttering process that I created is like all about the little things that I do that have lasting actual impact. Okay? Now, dishes don't stay clean, right? They get right again. But the impact of them not overrunning my kitchen,
Mhm,
right? So the impact that it's had on my life is that it's freed me to do the things I want to do. I really thought when I started that my goal was to have a magazine-worthy home because
mm.
it was before Pinterest, right?
Martha
Now we say
Stewart,
Pinterest.
what was that? Big, Better Homes or something like that?
Yes, like right, like, you know what I mean? Like the magazine pictures, the picture of the ideal stock photos of a living room. Like that's what I thought I was going for. But when I had that as my goal, I never made any progress,
Mm,
right? Because where I was so far from that, that the distance between those 2, I just didn't even know how to start. When I started working on my house, I gave myself permission to just declutter, right? Like, that was a big deal for me because 'cause I'd always thought, "I need to get organized." And then I realized, you know what? I'm so far gone. I'm just going to declutter. Decluttering is the thing that changed my home. Right.
yeah.
And when I started decluttering and started just getting things out, I shifted my goal to better.
Mm.
Right. So my goal is not to have the perfect, amazing house. My goal is to make this space better. There is literally no way to fail at better if I do anything at all. Right.
1%, 1%. There's a book, it's called, The Atomic Habits, and he talks
Okay.
about 1% better every day. It's not huge changes, it's 1%.
Yeah, as long as I am doing anything, I can throw away one piece of trash and I have successfully decluttered. I'm not done decluttering, but
Mhm,
I have successfully decluttered because my goal was better. When I shifted my goal to better, that's when my house actually immediately started to change. Where all
mhm,
those times when I was looking at this big, huge end goal, my house never changed. And in fact, just kept getting worse and worse because I was overwhelmed and I put off starting. But
yeah,
because I changed the goal to better, it moved toward where I wanted it to be. And as I moved to where I wanted it to be, that's when I realized actually my goal is to be free to do the things and not be held back by my house, right?
mm,
Like I love to do the videos, the write the books and do the podcasts and all those kinds of things. That's what I want to be doing. I don't want to be dealing with my home all the time, right? And
mhm,
so it is easier for me to just have so much less stuff in my home that even when I do in the midst of a book launch get completely tunnel visioned and my house, falls to the wayside, there's just so much less stuff that I can get it under control in 15 minutes, where before it was like, okay, well, here we go to a month of digging my way
Yeah.
out and still not really making progress because I wasn't actually decluttering. I was just moving stuff around, right? Where
Mhm.
now things are gone. There's so much less stuff in my house that even when it's out of control, it's not out of control, right?
Mm. Hey, 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 are you ready for an amazing business opportunity? Are you ready to break generational curses and build the wealth that you have prayed for? Well, listen, with Digital Boss Academy, we have hundreds of ebooks, planners, and templates that you can use and get personal resale rights. Yes, you heard that right. You can literally sell the products that are already done for you in your own digital store. Yes, every single one. Digital Boss Academy has products that lead to profit. It is your time to create legacy. It is your time to do it while inspiring others to do the same. Become the curse breaker you've been praying about. Click the link in the show notes to start your journey today. There's so much research in psychology that is directly related to having like an aesthetically pleasing space, right? Not perfect, but just a place where you feel like I'm free and I can like breathe and think and all of that stuff. So I would like to talk about, I teach my clients about the 5 domains, and I want
Okay.
to know how this has affected your 5 domains, just decluttering. How has it affected you spiritually, emotionally, financially, relationally, and physically?
So I will say the first thing I'll say there is one of the problems, and I think this is where I come in as the person who just talks and talks and talks and talks about this subject, right? Okay, because this is the subject I talk about. I explore all the different aspects, right?
Hmm.
And I always have to, as someone who struggled in my home, right?
Mhm.
When someone would tell me your house, or at least what I heard somebody saying was, you need to get your house decluttered so you'll be able to focus and concentrate, right?
Mhm.
I was, I didn't find that helpful because I am actually able to focus and concentrate. And then that's what causes the mess to happen.
'Cause
Do you
you're
see what
just
I'm saying?
in it. Yeah, you're in,
Yes.
yeah, mhm.
I zero in on something and I am so focused on that thing that things are getting completely out of control and I don't see it. I always say I don't see incremental mess. I don't see
Mm.
it building. I see perfectly clean. I see overwhelmingly messy. I don't see what's happening in between, right?
Uh,
And so because of that, I would let it build, not purposely, but just because I was zeroed in on something else. And then by the time I saw it, it was so big and overwhelming that I then didn't know what to do, which is a big part of what I teach now is like what to do in those situations. Right.
got
And
it.
so anyway, I just always have to bring that up because I
Yeah,
think that's one of those things that if we don't discuss it, then the person who is like, but I am able to do the project and that's how it
right.
gets this way, it's like, okay. But as far as spiritually, that's what I'm diving into to on in this book. And in reality, I kept thinking that I was going to that God was going to, as I worked on my house, that God would show me this thing that I'd been missing, right? Because I felt like I've got to be missing something, right? Like I just have to. Um, and that he was going to help me understand a spiritual concept, or I was going to find a verse that I'd never found before, or something that was going to change everything. And instead, what he kept showing me was, Dana, I've always been looking at your heart.
Mm,
Right? I'm not horrified by your mess. I know how it got there because I created your brain. I know you're able to zero in on a task, and I want you to be able to zero in on a task. But this stuff, comes out. So I think what has been really important for me is, for a long time, I thought that the answer to these problems for me was to be different than I am.
that's
And in
so
reality, It was to accept how I am and use
Mm,
that, right?
that's good.
So that difference is really important, which is a lot of what this book is about, right? Is that it's not a spiritual failure to have the mess. Can there be a spiritual factor? Of course there can, right? But getting the things out to where I'm free to then do the things that I want to do, like you were talking about, going ahead and doing the thing is often what allows us to actually fully understand, like
Mhm.
living in God's grace. I'm able to do that as I am free to do the things that He's called me to do because I'm not held back by my house.
Mhm. One of my favorite verses, is Psalms 134 and 19-ish, somewhere around there, but
Mhm.
I know that it says, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." And for years, Dana, I would, like, pray and cry on the ground and ask God to change me because
Yes.
I am very passionate and I am very all of my characteristics, and I want it to be different. I want it to be like the soft girls on Instagram and the ones that
Yes.
were cute, I wanted that, but God's like, "Girl, that ain't you. I made you
Yeah.
this way." And exactly what you said earlier, when I fully accepted, this is who I am, the spelling errors, the all the things, I attracted people
Yep.
that were looking for someone that's like, "Hey, let's get this stuff in line together. Let's heal together. Let's
Yeah.
do all the things together." And so that is why that is one of my absolute favorite verses, because I think so often we're trying to be something else and God's like, "No, I created you, but I want you to use this ultimately for his glory," right?
Absolutely.
Ultimately for his glory, and in the process, we get the benefit of the amazing social media following like you have, the books that you have written, the community that you have been able to build. So that's where I would like us to transition, is
Yeah.
just where you're at now. Like, what has the decluttering process brought you? Like, where are you at today?
Yeah, so I used to say people will often ask, "How bad was it?" And I'll say, "Well, I could have people over, I just needed 2 weeks to get ready." I would take a week to shove everything in, my bedroom because I could lock that door, right? And, then I would clean for the second week. So, because I couldn't actually clean when there was clutter everywhere, even though I liked things clean, right? Like, there was
Yeah,
just the reality that it was so much work. Now I can have people over in 15 minutes.
love that.
Mostly because my house is fine, right? Like, it's not an embarrassing mess anymore. It just I might need to, straighten some things in the kitchen or whatever, but also because I have now really seen that if somebody shows up at my door and my house is we're having a day where it's a mess, because that is my natural tendency, right? Is to not see it until I all of a sudden see it and I'm overwhelmed. If we're having one of those days, yes, it's so much better than it ever was before, but I know that God brought them to my door
Mm,
and that they need to see whatever it is there is to see that day,
yeah.
right? And it may not be that the imperfect home is specifically the thing that they need encouragement about, but they may just need to know, okay, Dana has her struggles. We
Mm.
all have our struggles. I can't imagine anyone out there would think I was perfect, but just in case, God gives me lots of opportunities to show people that I'm not. And so a lot of that is just me accepting that, okay, it's really important to not put this perfect face out there,
Yeah.
right? To not attempt to, because one of the things that God really showed me was, um we are jars of clay,
Mhm.
right? And jars of clay are not made of stainless steel. They are not strong. Like, we are meant to not be perfectly strong,
Yeah.
right? And the cracks are there because the Holy Spirit lives inside of me, right?
Mhm.
Because I believe in Jesus and because I've placed my faith in him, I have the Holy Spirit living in me. And if I am painting over and making sure that everything looks perfect on the outside, how are they going to see him? He
Mm,
shines through the cracks, right? It's through the cracks, it's through my weaknesses that his strength is made perfect. That's how people see God. That's
yeah.
how they see Jesus in me, is when my weakness shows that it is Jesus that I'm depending on. And so if I'm only trying to present myself as being strong and having it all together and perfect, then how are they supposed to see Jesus? Which is contrary to what I honestly think, as you mentioned, the enemy wants us to think, right? Like he that's why a lot of this stuff gets twisted, is that we think, "Oh, wait, if I'm representing Jesus, I have to represent perfection." And it's like, "No, no, 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 no. I need to represent what my relationship is with Jesus, which is I am not capable on my own at all. It is only through what God has already done for me and then
Yeah.
my faith in him. That's it. That's all I have." Um so yeah, I feel like I'm rambling, but
Yeah. No, you're that's good. I think people really this is gonna free a lot of people. I just know it. I know
I
that
hope
there's
so.
people that are in the depths of it and they feel like, they're the problem or they're not good enough because of, this really it could be a temporary situation or just because of their current situation.
Yeah.
You wrote a book. I want to know more about this book.
Yeah, so it's called Jesus Doesn't Care About Your Messy House, and uh again, it's basically a book about God's grace
Yeah.
and what that looks like played out in my life, specifically dealing with my thing that is the thing I don't like about myself, right? The thing that is my biggest struggle, that's my biggest source of shame. What does grace look like in that situation? And so um as I wrote about my house, God just showed me, listen, I've always been looking at your heart. Um, I want you to give me all of you instead of, thinking that you have to get things together in order to give it to me. So, even the part give God wanted me to give him all of me, even the parts I couldn't imagine he would ever want, right? Like it didn't make sense to me that this would be the thing that he would have me to do with my life, but he's given me this platform specifically about this issue. And I know that, especially for Christian women, there is a lot of shame around this issue, right? And there's a lot of unhelpful things that are said, like, quick statements that are often not even correct or out of context, like God
Mhm.
is a God of order, or, cleanliness is next to godliness. That's not even in the Bible, right? God is a God of order is not talking about your house anyway, but
Right.
also, cleanliness is next to godliness is not even in the Bible, right? But
Right.
people will say that. If you Google, is cleanliness next to godliness in the Bible, all the blurbs will say, no, but the idea is there. And I'm like, no, no, let's dive straight in and
Mhm.
see what is it that the Bible says so that we can take this idea head on, and just like really dive in and go, what is it that God is looking for? And yeah, so it's just, I think it's really important to have the conversation, because I think there's a lot of times when people are trying to be helpful, and when you take something that's already a big struggle and
Mhm.
then you try to be helpful by saying something that sounds to the person struggling like, oh, okay, so you're saying the reason that my house is a disaster is because I don't have enough faith. Well, now you take this struggle that I already had and we've layered on spiritual guilt. And now
Mm.
it's turned into this thing that felt unsolvable anyway, is now turned into a big spiritual guilt. It's like, let's peel all that away and talk about what is it that God is actually looking for from us.
Yes, and it's all about that heart space, and
Mhm,
I know that your book is going to, again, help so many women really see God's grace. You continue to talk about God's grace, and
mhm.
in the state of our country and the state of our world right now, literally, that's what's going to keep all of us, is
Yeah.
His grace.
Well, I
So
think it's so important to get down to what matters,
mhm,
right? Like, let's get down to what actually matters, which is who God is,
yeah,
who we are, and what our relationship is with him, right?
yeah.
And that changes everything about everything in our lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. TWT family. I know that you guys have had so many aha moments and so hopefully just a little bit of reprieve from the guilt and the shame that may have been plaguing you because maybe you have this dirty little secret, right? No pun intended. Maybe you have this massive thing that you need to declutter, whether it's a room, whether it's a your heart space, your body, whatever that is. I once heard a story or a quote that said, we can try to be perfect and invite Jesus into all of the rooms, but he wants to go into that junk drawer. He wants to go into that closet that you shove everything in. He wants to go into the garage that's not perfectly put together. And I believe that the work that Dana's doing is really helping us allow Jesus into all the spaces of our heart and helping us to declutter those spaces physically, emotionally, and spiritually. All of Dana's links to her everywhere that you can get in contact with her will be in the show notes. But Dana, I also want you to share. And then I just feel it really heavy on my heart. I would like for you to share to Dana maybe 10 years ago, the version of you that many women that are listening, maybe they're in that version of where you were 10 years ago. Just share some encouraging words of how they can start this process and just uplift them as they're in their process.
Yeah. My encouragement would be to let yourself do small things
Mhm.
all the way.
Mm,
Okay. I know you have big goals and big dreams and big desires, but the way to get there is to do small things all the way. So, picking up a piece of trash and putting it into the trash bag or the recycling bin, that's a small thing all the way. Like, don't discount any of those little bitty small things.
yeah.
Picking up the thing that you're like, okay, I call it procrastinator. The the clean laundry on the couch. It's so easy to be like, no, 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 there's more important things to do with my time.
Mhm.
But if I don't do those small things, then even when I do the big things, they don't have the impact that I'm wanting them to have because I'm like, well, I did the big thing and my house still feels so messy. So let yourself do those small things one by one, taking it there now all the way. And the impact is incredibly powerful over time.
100%. I often like write them down and I cannot stand lists. And the reason why I can't stand lists is because I believe as women, we have this tendency of like making a list of 20 million things and then it becomes
Yep.
unrealistic. So
Yep.
I do three non-negotiables. So I
Hmm.
want to encourage anyone that is struggling with decluttering, just three things that you're going to do. I love the laundry one because that's always on my list every
Yeah,
week because I am one. I don't mind washing it, putting it in the dryer, but I can't stand folding it.
I know.
So every week I'm like, fold the laundry, and then I feel so good after, right? So it's those small things,
But
those
if you can't do all the laundry, fold one thing.
yes.
Fold 2 things,
Mhm.
fold as much as you can get in your hands and take it in one trip and just it's amazing how those teeny tiny little bits of things will really add up for big
Yeah.
impact.
And then adding just another layer, like kind of the frosting on the cake, is celebrate when you have done those things.
Mhm.
Celebration goes so far. Like
Yeah.
it makes you want to do it again. It hits the reward center in our brain, that dopamine. And so you're
Mhm.
going to do more of it. Dana, how can the TWT family get in contact with you?
You can go to aslobcomesclean.com. That's my website still, and, that has links to my books and my YouTube
Podcast? You have
channel
a
and
podcast? Yep.
podcast. Yeah, all the places. I also train and certified decluttering coaches to actually go into people's homes and work with them through my process. So,
Wow, what a I mean, what a journey. I'm so
yeah,
proud of you for all of the work
thank
that
you.
you've done and the
Thank
work
you.
that you're helping other women do. Thank you so much for your contribution to this
Thank
world.
you. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
You're welcome. All right, TWT family, make sure you share this podcast. I know you know at least at the minimum three people that will benefit from Dana's story from this podcast. So share it directly to them. Also, make sure you go over to Apple Podcasts and give us those 5 stars. This just helps the algorithm tell people that this is good content and it gets us a higher reach. Also, if you are on what's the other places? YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and share it. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this community. Until next week, bye bye.
Bye.